Hi, this video is a remaster of all my grandfather's old stories about the war. All the improved and expanded stories in one video, updated. Enjoy. Of course, my first question, which he didn't want to answer, was, Grandpa, do you know the Germans?
Well, that's just it.
He didn't really like talking about it, so he usually joked it off, but sometimes he still managed to find out something. And here's how it was the first time. He was 16. They didn't take him into the army, so he joined the partisans. The partisans lived in the forest and didn't know what was going on in the city.
So you go into town and give this letter to our agent. But the main thing is, don't get caught by the Germans, otherwise they'll torture you.
He came, gave it to them, got ready to go back to the forest, crossed the streets of Wehrmacht. Soldiers coming towards him, and my grandfather had a pistol in his pocket. What to do? He turned into an alley, climbed over a fence, turned around. A German was standing right in front of him. And the point is, the German didn't immediately understand what was going on. There was such a pause. What next? The German knew, thinking, I'll talk his ear off and he'll let me go.
I'm a fascist. Yes, that's good. A communist. Nay, 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 Ned. Bad? Nay. You die.
And after these words, the German suspected something and reached for his rifle. And the old man had a pistol right in his hand, in his pocket. And he suddenly fired the pistol at his head, hits the temple.
Oh, no, I die.
Well, that's it. The man fell, and the old man ran into the forest. Only later did he find out. He killed him. In fact, derailing a train is no easy task. There are guards ahead of the train, and they had more than just machine guns. And one day, they sent the old man to plant a bomb. He says it looked like this, a wooden box with a spring in it. Well, explosives. The train moves, the spring jumps off. Bam. It was my grandfather's first time. He climbed up the embankment, started winding the spring, but it was too tight. He was almost there, and then it jumped off. My grandfather barely managed to hook it with the tip of his fingernail and tried with all his might to pull it back. It didn't work. And then, the train was approaching. It was already very close, humming behind the trees. But the spring just wouldn't budge. Well, it almost tore his fingernail off, but he did it. And he says he'd never heard such a loud sound in his life. A train wreck is terrifying to... Watches were rare back then, but everyone in the Germans had one. And after the battle, the children from the kindergartens went around collecting them. In the end, those who survived collected a bag full of German watches in a few months.
Oh, when I get back, I'll sell all the watches and build myself a house in the village. No more buns. The forest is nearby, and there are no Germans or any bastards.
And so, they were about to storm Königsberg, a major operation. An extra 5 kilograms would certainly be a hindrance.
What did I come up with? We'll hide all the watches in one hiding place. Whoever survives gets to keep them.
Fine.
Fine.
Well, during the assault, my grandfather was running, and a bomb fell and concussed him. He says I'm lying in a crater, not understanding why the hell I'm naked, but it turns out the explosion tears off all my clothes, even my underwear. Where am I?
Don't worry, you're in the hospital. Concussion. We'll get him back on his feet soon and go home.
After the war, I returned to that place. Of course, I didn't expect to find anything there. A lot of time had passed. Someone definitely took it, but everyone knew about that place. Who hid it there? He came up and saw that all the bags were still there. It turns out that after that assault, there was no one left to return. Not a shikern. He didn't take anything. He just left. Now I'll tell you how my grandfather fought the Ukrainians in 1942. When the war started, my grandfather joined the partisans. The partisans were divided into detachments. Each region had its own detachment, and my grandfather was in the Loyev District Detachment. It's near Ukraine. By the way, there's still a military museum there. And my grandfather's photo is in that museum, can you imagine? And so, as a partisan, they didn't give him a weapon, but sent him on errands. Either go into town or fetch water.
Victor, go to Uncle Oleg. They called you,
And the first Ukrainian my grandfather fought with was Uncle Oleg. He was from Ukraine and was very mean and nasty.
Vitya, you're in my brigade now. Just keep your ears open or I'll break them up.
Uncle Oleg was practically a grandfather, all gray, a mustache, children, grandchildren. He went to work the night shift. And there was an air raid on their town when the war started. He comes home from work and the house is gone. A bomb. No one survived. That's how he ended up with the partisans.
Vitya, what are you messing around for? You can't go any faster.
And so Grandpa was assigned to a brigade with this Ukrainian uncle, Uncle Oleg. They were blowing up the railroad. When the Red Army re-entered the occupied territories, all the partisan units joined the army. Yeah, joined. And that's how it went. Grandpa ended up in the infantry and Uncle Oleg was with him.
And so they were about to launch the first assault, break through the fortifications, attack.
Vitya, being nervous? I'll show this to the Hitler. He won't be happy.
Uncle Lesha, but Grandpa was scared. And so he ran, and he had a rifle with a bayonet. And he thinks now that he's gathered all his strength, all the anger he had for this German, and how he pokes the German with the bayonet and pierces him right through. Well, the rifle goes through and gets stuck.
The German. Oi, nay, what should I do? Why are you stabbing?
The old man tries to get the rifle out, but it won't come out. Their ribs got a terrible picture, and it's neither here nor there.
Oi, it hurts! Russian! Why are you doing this?
Nay, what should I do? Let him go quickly.
And so the old man said this: I never would have thought it was so easy to kill a man. Just the slightest movement is enough. The body is very soft human, and that's it. And he says many newcomers at the front died in the first attack. That's exactly what hits with all his might. And that's it, the weapon is stuck in technology.
So, do you know explosives? And how to mine?
I see.
Give him a mortar.
Because Grandpa had worked with bombs in the partisans, he and Uncle Oleg were assigned to a mortar unit with 4 men. One carried a pipe, another a slab. The mortar was placed on an iron slab. The third carried the mines, and the fourth carried a radio. He was told where to fire. And so one day, a battle was going on. Their position was identified, and they started shooting and bombing. And then the following happened. The mortar exploded, Grandpa jumped into a crater, and a bombardment began specifically targeting their position. That was it. There was no way they could survive. Artillery destroys everything, no matter how much they hide. And Uncle Oleg was responsible for the slab. He jumped after Grandpa and covered him with the slab from the mortar. Grandfather says, I wake up. The slab on me feels like a blanket. My ears are ringing. I climb out of the crater. It's as if someone dug up the beds everywhere.
It's so soft you can walk on it.
And everyone is dead. Only the slab saved. My grandfather, Uncle Oleg, was killed. My grandfather was given a medal for that battle and transferred to another unit. Ahead was still the storming of Königsberg, a concussion, hospitals, crutches. Well, Uncle Oleg was buried in a mass grave, in one of those where, you know, there's a big stone and lots of names. Each of those names has its own story, something like this, but you can't know it anymore because there are fewer and fewer witnesses to these events. But every inscription on those stones know that it's someone's story. The same person as my grandfather or this Uncle Oleg. What happened to my grandfather after May 9, 1945? Namely, why didn't the war end for him? And why did he fight until 1947? After the war, my grandfather came to his hometown, namely Loyal. He went to the military registration and enlistment office. Hello, comrades. I see you have extensive experience in demolitions. Do you want to serve your homeland? Since my grandfather was in a partisan detachment that operated in the Loyev district, he had unique information about where they mined the fields and swamps, their labs.
And he was enlisted in a demining brigade in this area. They searched for mines, removed minefields, unexploded bombs and ammunition, then took them to the testing ground and blew them up. There was one incident. They found 70 mines under a bridge that everyone had been driving on for many years. The Red Army wanted to blow up this bridge at the beginning of the war to slow the German advance, and they didn't have time. So it turns out that first the Germans drove on this bridge for several years, then they recaptured this territory, and the Soviet army was already driving by. And all this time, this bridge was mined and no one even knew. And here's another story. Once they were demining an area near a village, Chamois-et-Dolge, and an old woman came to their brigade and said,
Guys, I have an unexploded shell at home. From 1943, help.
They came to this old woman's house to demine. They looked and there was a huge rusty pile in the middle of the room. Old woman, what is this? It turned out that there was fighting here, and during the fighting, this shell flew into her house. Tansandu. Then soldiers passed by their village, and she asked what she should do. And some soldier advised her to pour cold water on the shell every day. And this old woman lived with the shell in her house for 3 years and would just wake up in the morning, pour a bucket of water on the shell, and go about her business.
She said, actually, sometimes. I even poured water on it twice a day to make sure it didn't explode.
So my grandfather served in the army until 1947, and here's another story for which he was even awarded a silver medal for bravery. Anyway, that's the story. It was during the storming of Königsberg, before my grandfather was shell-shocked. There was a fight and a lot of chaos. A Red Army soldier runs up to my grandfather. Apparently there's no contact with headquarters. The signalman was supposed to fix the connection. See the wire? I need to run in the direction of the houses and see what happened. See, Grandpa ran along this wire, and all around him there were bullets flying, bombs, shells exploding, planes firing from cannons, ships with long-range artillery firing straight at Grandpa.
Hello, Whistler, we can't stop this Russian! Hello, what should we do?
So he runs behind the house, looks, the wire goes on, and then ends. And a pile of debris approaches. A man was lying in the debris. He turned it over, dead, and looks. What is this? A spool. It turned out to be a wire on a spool. And it was a signalman. He simply took this spool and ran with it. He unwound it all the way to headquarters like a big extension cord. And Grandpa didn't know where to run. So he took the spool and ran at random. And something saved him. Somehow he guessed right. In his old age, my grandfather started to write a book about his adventures, but he never finished it. It's at my grandmother's house. It's called Boys. What's the story? He had 3 friends, 15 or 16 years old. Just before the war broke out, they all split up. One friend went to Minsk and later joined the Minsk City Underground. Then he was shot. The other friend was my grandfather. He joined the partisans. And the third friend, he joined the police. Then there he tells everything, how and what, but never finished writing. In 1941, when the war began, my grandfather had 2 friends, both 16 years old. They decided to go to their families. But the front line was advancing so quickly that by the time they were traveling, they all ended up in occupied territories. What to do? My grandfather was in Loyev and joined the partisans. The second friend went to the village and became a policeman. The third friend went to Minsk to visit his parents and ended up in the Minsk Underground. And now I'll tell the story of this friend who ended up in Minsk. The story of his life and death.
Grandfather stories about the war. Episode 4, friends. There
were no partisans in Minsk. Partisans are considered to be those in the forest, while underground resistance fighters are believed to exist in the city. And so, from Germany itself, Hitler personally sent one of his most trusted governors to take control of Minsk and Belarus and impose a new order. His name was Gauleiter Wilhelm Kube.
Residents, today is a holiday in honor of your liberation. All residents, quickly rejoice and clap your hands, or you will be shot.
So, this Kube immediately began imposing his own order, holding an annual parade to celebrate the liberation of Belarus from the communists, and establishing 260 concentration camps to improve living conditions for the residents. But the most horrifying thing is that 14 of them were blood factories for the front. Children's blood is considered the best for transfusions, so children were transported there by the trainload. There, they lived in barracks and set up a farm, a special barracks for transfusions. Along the entire center of the barracks were numerous metal slanted tables where patients rotated day and night in 2 shifts. Children were fattened up and their blood was pumped out day and night. Not only a child, but even an adult couldn't survive this way for long. Therefore, the life expectancy of such a patient was a few weeks. Then the next patient and the next was buried in pit. Another practice involved hanging them on special metal hoops high above the floor. While hanging from these hoops, they were injected with an anticoagulant solution. Then skin was cut from the feet and a special container was placed underneath. The containers were specifically selected for the patient's age and weight. Accordingly, a container of a specific size was created for each age. Blood began to flow from the patient's bottom into this container. At first, the patient's head would spin, then turn increasingly yellow. The body's color would change to white or yellow, and then the person would die, and then the person would die. The Germans even came up with a special name for this procedure, complete blood donation for the needs of the front. Plan for the development of Eastern territories. It seemed nothing could save the civilians from these monsters. In their powerlessness and helplessness, people had even lost all hope. Now their future was either slave labor until death, or being killed for the slightest provocation, or being drained and bled dry in a death factory. And so, the underground fighters in Minsk received orders to stop the villainous Gauleiter Kube at all costs, to assassinate him and send his uncle to stop all these horrors. This friend of my grandfather's was in one of these underground groups. What did they come up with? A film was to be shown at a cinema attended by all the prominent German officials, including Kube. The film premiered directly from Germany in German. That's what they decided. They mined the areas where Kube and the German leaders would be in advance. Everything was ready exactly as it should be. Bombs, everything. Evening is falling. The sun is hiding behind the horizon. The film is about to show. People gather at the main entrance, then take their seats. Everyone is in their seats. The film begins. Kube enters and sits down to watch the film. He sits there, everything is fine. A pleasant summer evening surrounded by friends. Then the lieutenant colonel receives the order. Begin the operation. He activates the device. It doesn't work. Again. Nothing. Again.
Hey, you, what's that in your hands?
Achtung! Achtung, outsider!
Explosion, smoke, fire, a pile of corpses succeeded. Finally, they managed to stop this villain. That's it, the end for him. After such an explosion, of course, no one could have survived. And then the fire started. The target was eliminated. People can now breathe freely. When morning came and the sun rose above the horizon, what happened? A commotion began in the secret headquarters of the underground. It turned out Kube had stayed home that evening and hadn't come to the cinema. And this was a man who looked like him. Some SS man too. What were you going to do? They tried 5 times and nothing had worked. They'd thrown incendiary bombs, blown him up, drowned him, fried him with electricity. Hitler even nicknamed him Lucky. And so, in short, he'd gotten so fed up that they'd put a time bomb right under his pillow. He wakes up in the middle of the night.
What the hell is going on? I don't understand what that sound is. Yeah, something's really ticking. And what is that? Some kind of wires. Wait, what could that be?
But he didn't have time to do anything. At 2 in the morning, there was a bang in Kupe's mansion, which turned a Gauleiter into 4 Gauleiters. Now, Wilhelm Kube was truly finished, but what happened to my grandfather's friend? Remember, I said he died. The next day, in an act of revenge, the Nazis carried out a punitive operation. They rounded up and shot 300 people suspected of having ties to the underground. One of these people was the hero of our story, my grandfather's friend. And so his journey ended. At that time, my grandfather was somewhere completely different, somewhere at the front. See, the assault on Königsberg and a shell shock awaited him. Then came the end of the war, but his friend never lived to see it, and they would never meet. Only after the war did my grandfather learn the fate of these comrades. He made a special trip to find out about his friends and what had happened to them. That's the story. Maybe I painted it a little creepily, as if it were as real as possible. That's all.